Welcome to episode 5 of Be Simone Frequency, a channel podcast for the new earth, with me, your host, Trish Simone Wild. This week's episode is about generational curses and gifts and how we can use them in our lives.
Hey y'all. So much has been going on. Long story short, my mom has been battling cancer. So I've made the decision to relocate to Pennsylvania, where she is and my family is, for an extended amount of time. Right now, I'm actually back in Washington briefly, packing up, getting some things I need, spending some quality time with my people, getting my co-hostess with the mostest, Persephone, and we're going to head back to Pennsylvania on the 14th. On top of that, the energy has been wild out there. I have, ever since a couple weeks before Samhain, I have been channeling and working with the dead more than I've had time to channel for the living and helping portals and crossing over. I talked a lot about that in episode 4, so you can go back and check that out. And then from there, we went right into these massive solar flares, which are all about raising of the frequency of Earth, Mother Gaia herself. And as part of that, we as a human species, our frequency is also being forced to raise as the new Earth separation continues. I've talked about that quite a bit in episodes 1 and then also my Substack writings. So go back and check out my Simone Seeds group to hear more back information on that. And I didn't really pick a topic for this episode of the Simone Frequency, but I've been thinking a lot about the idea of generational trauma and generational curses, especially since I've been spending a lot of time with my family and knowing that, my mother tried her best to break the curses and the generational trauma and not pass them on to me. She's still, of course, dealing with her own stuff. And before her, my grandmother and my great grandmother and everybody who came before tried to make things better a little bit. And then, of course, I'm trying to create a understanding for my daughter and not pass on these generational curses. But somebody said to me quite a while ago when I was at my inpatient program, and they said, if you're going to claim your generational curses and your generational trauma, you need to claim your generational gifts as well, because there's power in those. And certainly some of the ways that shows up in my family is channeling, mediumship, but also working with plants and animals, having a green thumb. There's a lot of artistic skills and gifts. My grandmother got wild squirrels to take peanuts right off of her back porch, and this was like in the city. This was not like out in the country. So and then there's also this concept of DNA and what comes down through our DNA. Generationally, I have Lynch Syndrome, which is a genetic predisposition to certain types of cancer that I have to get checked for every year, and that's part of the cancer that my mom and then my aunt, her twin, is dealt with. My cousin, she is genetically a half sister because our moms are our maternal twins, biological twins. So, I really would like to see if Simone would be willing to talk about some of these things that I'm dealing with right now in my life. We're also going into these holidays, which can be a really beautiful time, but it can also be a really traumatic time for some people whose family of origin has not been able to accept them for who they are, or perhaps, there's distance. My biological father and I are not in contact. I've cut him off. He was narcissistic, extremely abusive, and I didn't tell many people about that for many, many years. So there is times where, to break a generational curse means removing the relationship. And I don't carry I've forgiven him in that he does not get control over my life. I don't think about him except for when I'm talking to him in this kind of format of a teaching environment. So that's where I would like to go with episode 5, but Simone, as Greg knows, who is back behind the camera helping me. So, which is why you have better camera angles and lighting today than me doing it by myself. So enjoy him while we got him. Um, he is staying out here on the Pacific Northwest region, and he is working on my other podcast film series, Cultivating Conscious Connections. But so thanks, Greg, for running camera back up. And at this point, I'm just gonna go into it and see what Simone has to say. As always, Greg, if something seems like it needs more clarity, please feel free to ask questions. I've kind of been winging it on my own with these last couple of episodes, so we'll go from there. Soften the approach to all of it. Be more gentle with yourselves and with one another. There are many, many generational curses being broken right now in the collective and individually from multiple lifetimes, meaning that there is curses that your soul brings in from other lifetimes. That is one element of curse. But then there is also the genetic DNA curses that run down through the bloodline, the literal DNA. The curses live in the cells, much like what Trish is discussing with her genetics of her Lynch syndrome. One can think of these curses as in the same way: curses of jealousy, curses of anger, alcohol, addiction, all narcissism. All of these curses form in the cells and create physical damage in the forms of biogenetic cancers and diseases. And these, much like we've talked about previously, these genes can be turned on or switched off and they can be healed. And what is fascinating is when you begin to heal a generational trauma or curse for yourself, you heal it for your future, but you are also healing it for the ancestors of your past, your mothers, your grandmothers, your grandfathers. And it is a circular or a spiral. It is not a linear healing. So it can become confusing to understand how you can heal your ancestors while you are also breaking the curses for yourself and your offspring and those to come after, because it is important to understand that this generational healing trauma gifts, it is in a circle. And you're absolutely right in that there is gifts, your gifts of channeling. With any trauma, we have trauma responses. We have freeze, fawn, what do you guys call it? Flight, fight. These are DNA, genetic curses, and how you respond to fear and danger. And it comes from your biological origins being both of the earth, but then also galactic, because of course the DNA is fused together and it comes down your family line for generations. And that is why healing must take place in so many different approaches. If in your genetics you understand healing as something that comes from taking of medicine or a shot or a more Western traditional mindset, then your body is going to heal more successfully in that matter. If in your ancestral healing you understand healing to come from energetic or prayer or meridians or any of the many, many different types of healing modalities out there, your body might respond differently to those. So it is important to understand that Trish, while she thinks that healing her pain through acupuncture makes the most sense to her spiritually and mentally and emotionally. So, of course, we take acupuncture, but the body still freezes up. And her mother understood that you heal pain through taking of a medication that relaxes your muscles, then that is the medication that might work for you. So, it is very, very nuanced in how we heal generational curses. And we talk about breaking them, but perhaps the concept of healing them makes more sense. and then embracing the generational gifts, and then the forgiveness of those that came before you, not for them, but for yourself. Often the ghosts that haunt us most come down our ancestral line. Trish learned that in the helping crossing over of several of her ancestors in the last year. In fact, we talked about the need for her to be on the mid-Atlantic East Coast area of Pennsylvania, as you call it, that land, because it is about not only holding down the grid work for the land, which is part of her soul's purpose and her soul's gifts and her soul's memory, but she's also there to heal her family's generational curses, and then also the collective families of the generational curses of the people around her. So that is very, very important to understand about when you heal your individual line, you are also healing your collective line. Trish is getting a little scattered because of feeling self-conscious. So we're going to give her a moment. It is true that the generational gifts and generational curses of the DNA of the literal bloodline are just as important. And in some ways, when it comes down to understanding that your soul is here to have a human experience, it is in some ways often more important than understanding the soul gifts and the soul origins, but of the DNA origins. And of course, your DNA origins as humans are also galactic as well. So it's much more intertwined and connected. So what we would say would be to be more gentle with yourselves, with your ancestors, and with your children and with one another, and recognizing that some of our ancestors pass on and they become very, very wise and they are good guidance for us. And some of our ancestors pass on and they're stuck and they're struggling and they need help. And you may say, but I want to be able to come to my ancestors for help. This is not fair. I don't have elders. I don't have the ancestors to go to for the wisdom. And that is because it was destroyed from them for many, many generations of power struggles and dynamics and people taking from each other here on earth. Um, Believe it or not, the frequency on earth is the highest it has ever been in this current iteration of it, before it was destroyed. There's been many times where humanity has reached its peak, as you might say, of evolution or enlightenment, but there was not as many people on the earth at that time. And then for various reasons, climate disasters, egotistical nature, humanity does have to start over. So the earth and humanity are much, much older than we come to realize and understand. But we say this to help you be aware and not be afraid that there is no grand catastrophe coming this time. You are doing your healing work. You are raising your frequency. You are claiming your generational and collective gifts as humans. And you are moving to the next phase of the new earth, as Trish likes to call it, or the raised frequency of Mother Gaia. And it will be, again, as we've said before, still some darkness yet, some more curses that humanity is needing to break before it gets lighter. But the light is there. You are seeing it through the sky in the forms of colors and auroras, and we are cheering for you. But of course, because humanity has been taught the way it has, we see you writing, many of you writing it off as a scientific phenomenon, and not realizing that galactics and miracles and magic and science, they're really much all the same thing. You have a saying that magic is just science you do not understand. And I'm trying to get the name of the person who said it from Trisha's memory bank, and it's not there. I don't That's something Trish pulled out from her memory and gave to me. She can't remember who said it, but I guess we'll add it in there. But the point is that technology and grid work and the crystalline grid of source and science and physics, it is really all one and the same, and it is sacred mathematical wisdom of the universe. And you are in a time where you are literally witnessing the breaking of the chains, the breaking of the curses, and the claiming of the gifts. And not everyone is able to do that all at one time. And then, of course, we are sad and we mourn for them, but we lift up our ancestors because perhaps they did not come as far as we would have wished, but they came as far as they were truly able to. And many of your ancestors are back here on the planet and other incarnations right now, fighting with you, trying to grow, trying to be better. It does no good to hold anger or grudge towards those of your ancestors who have passed on. It does not mean that their behaviors are forgiven. It just means that do not allow the curse of anger to live inside you and consume you and turn into disease and cancers and other ailments, because one of the biggest curses that you are needing to fight right now is the poisoning of Mother Gaia, of her soils, of her waters, of her airs. And many of you are so sick in your human bodies. And, those curses are very, very real, and they are not healing as fast as many would like to see. And so that is why we have found this Gaia rebirthing herself. It is Gaia that is the new earth, is more like the daughter of the Gaia earth rather than the separation of one into two. It is more of the new Gaia, the new earth, that we are of a higher frequency, and then the old earth is staying behind the mother, much like we do with children. So Gaia is having to learn how to break the curses of her kin, her family, the humans and galactics that have lived here and have abused her in the past. And so this is a very literal uh, example of as within, so without, as above, so below. And to remember that it is not just humanity that is here to break its ancestral curses and traumas and claim its gift. It is also humanity's relationship with Mother Earth, with Gaia, with nature spirits that have curses to break and healing to do and gifts to claim. And it is a time of reverence and awe for humanity if you are able to step back and view it that way. And that is our message for today. Gregory, do you have anything you would like clarity on or would like to add that while we have you here? Do you want to know who you're speaking to? We are a conglomerate of many, many beings. Trish has been most comfortable with the persona of her higher self, Simone speaking through her. But Simone has given us permission to talk to you more directly as part of the mass galactic exposure and perhaps disclosure that has been going on since the October. We want you to understand that there is nothing to be afraid of, that we are here to support you and help you, and we are trying to shield you from as much pain and damage as possible during this necessary process, and that you are very loved, and we applaud your efforts as you work to deal with these curses and traumas and gifts as you've come to call them. And remember that it is all about the understanding of the soul trying to grow and learn. And also the fact that humanity, Earth, is doing something that has been done in very, very few galaxies to this scale before. And it is not easy, and we recognize that. And we welcome you, humanity, Earth, to the galactic universe. Trish is trying to decide if she's okay with what just happened. She's really freaked out by she got very comfortable with channeling of mediums and extended masters and higher selves and Simone and other lifetimes which have popped up in the past. But the whole galactic alien thing is really, really freaking her out. Her soul origin of that is of Lyran, of the bird people, of the feline people, of the lion people, of the uh, Andromedan galaxy. And then, of course, they pit stop in the Andromedan constellation. But then also, she has had many, many lifetimes on other planets. So this is all very normal for her. It is more of being concerned about being freaked out about what the people closest to her think. She's working through that and has done well. And we will call it on this. What are we calling this? An episode? All right. Thank you.
Joining me on this episode of The Simone Frequency, a channeled podcast for the new earth, with your host, Trish Simone Wild. Please like, subscribe, and share, and join my Simone Seeds community. My new website is up and running, and all my services are available for booking. Please visit me at sassybonespp.com. Check out my new website, leave some love,